On May 29, 1985, Vicky Gail Purdy vanished after a night out in Waikīkī. Her body was found the next morning at Keehi Lagoon, bound and strangled. But who took her life and why? Between 1985 and 1986, an unidentified serial killer targeted multiple women across Hawaii. Regina Sakamoto disappeared on January 14, 1986, after missing her bus to school. Denise Hughes' decomposing body was discovered in Moanalua stream on February 1, 1986. Louise Medeiros' remains were found near Waikele stream on April 2, 1986. Diane Suzuki vanished on July 6, 1985, after last being seen outside a dance academy in Aiea. These murders remained unsolved for decades. Investigators identified patterns in the killings. Victims found with their hands bound behind their back and signs of sexual assault. The case led to changes in Hawaii's harassment laws, including the inclusion of stalking. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, no suspect was ever identified or charged. The Honolulu Strangler remains one of the most infamous unsolved cases in Hawaiian criminal history. Investigators still cannot explain what happened to Linda Pesce, whose discovery was incomplete. The killer's identity and whereabouts remain unknown. On January 14, 1986, Regina Sakamoto missed her bus from Waipahu to Lelehua High School. She was last heard from by her boyfriend at 7:15 a.m. when she called to say she would be late. The next day, her body was found at Keehi Lagoon. She was wearing her blue tank top and white sweatshirt, but her lower body was unclothed. Her hands were bound behind her back, and she had been raped and strangled. Regina Sakamoto was 17 years old and planning on attending Hawaii Pacific University in the fall. This second case led police to suspect the same killer as the first because of the same modus operandi. On February 1, 1986, a grim discovery was made in Moanalua stream. 3 young fishermen stumbled upon the decomposing body of Denise Hughes. Her body was wrapped in a blue tarp and clothed in a blue dress, with her hands bound behind her back. This marked one of the first confirmed victims directly linked to the Honolulu Strangler case, a series of killings that gripped Hawaii in fear. The pattern of her death, sexual assault, strangulation, and binding, was consistent with earlier killings, adding urgency to an already growing investigation into an unidentified killer who had targeted multiple women over just months. On April 2, 1986, the decomposing body of Louise Medeiros was discovered near Waikele stream by road workers. Medeiros, age 25, had disappeared after disembarking from a late-night flight to Oahu on March 26. Her blouse was still on, but her lower body was unclothed. Her hands were bound behind her back. This discovery marked the 4th victim attributed to the Honolulu Strangler, leaving families and investigators desperate for answers. The string of unsolved murders continued to haunt the state, with each new case adding to the growing fear that gripped Hawaii. On July 6, 1985, Diane Suzuki disappeared after last being seen outside the Rosalie Woodson Dance Academy in Aiea. She was a 19-year-old dancer and student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Suzuki was employed as a dance instructor at the academy, where she was last seen at about 5 p.m. Her disappearance remains unsolved and separate from the Honolulu Strangler case. The investigation into her case led to significant changes in Hawaii's harassment laws, including the addition of stalking and the reclassification of TRO violations as a Class C felony. This followed the discovery of blood evidence at the site where she was last seen. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, Diane Suzuki's disappearance remains one of the most puzzling aspects of this period. At the site where Diane Suzuki was last seen outside the Rosalie Woodson Dance Academy in Aiea on July 6, 1985, blood evidence was discovered. This finding played a pivotal role in shaping Hawaii's legal responses to violence against women. The presence of this evidence led to significant changes in state laws regarding harassment and stalking, including defining stalking as a crime and making violations of temporary restraining orders, TROs, a Class C felony with a maximum penalty of 5 years in jail. These changes aimed to provide better legal recourse for individuals facing threats or unwanted attention. While the discovery at this location highlighted the need for stronger protections for victims, it did not directly lead to any charges being filed in Diane Suzuki's disappearance case. On February 1, 1986, Denise Hughes' decomposing body was found in Moanalua stream by 3 young fishermen. Her decomposing body was clothed in a blue dress, wrapped in a blue tarp, and with her hands bound. She had been sexually assaulted. Louise Medeiros' decomposing body was discovered near Waikele stream by road workers on April 2, 1986. She was wearing her blouse, but her lower body was unclothed, and her hands were bound behind her back. Both victims showed signs of sexual assault. These discoveries deepened the mystery of who was responsible for these crimes and raised questions about what had happened to other missing women. In 1985 and 1986, investigators in Hawaii faced a series of unsettling crimes that pointed to an unknown serial killer targeting women on Oahu. The initial pattern was consistent. Each woman found with her hands bound behind her back, signs of sexual assault, and in remote locations. This pattern helped shape the case's nickname, the Honolulu Strangler, and informed ongoing investigations into the unsolved murders. 5 women were found dead and attributed to the same unknown assailant: Vicki Gale Purdy, Regina Sakamoto, Denise Hughes, Louise Medeiros, and Linda Pesce. While investigators identified a clear pattern in the first 4 cases, the disappearance of Diane Suzuki did not fit that profile. It is unclear why her case differed from the others. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, the identity of the perpetrator remains unknown. The victims were found in different parts of Oahu. Vicki Gale Purdy and Regina Sakamoto were both discovered at Keehi Lagoon, while Denise Hughes was located in Moanalua stream and Louise Medeiros near Waikele stream. This string of unsolved murders prompted authorities to establish a task force dedicated to finding the killer. The case continues to be a source of fascination and unease for many, as it highlights the vulnerability of individuals in even seemingly safe communities. Linda Pesce remains one of the victims associated with the Honolulu Strangler case. Unlike the other confirmed victims, her case remains unresolved. While Vicki Gale Purdy, Regina Sakamoto, Denise Hughes, and Louise Medeiros were all found in streams or lagoons, Linda Pesce's body has never been recovered. This leaves investigators without a definitive answer regarding her fate. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement over the years, no conclusive evidence has emerged to confirm whether Linda Pesce became another victim of the Honolulu Strangler or met with a different fate altogether. Diane Suzuki disappeared on July 6, 1985, outside the Rosalie Woodson Dance Academy in Aiea. Her case did not fit the pattern linked to the Honolulu Strangler, leaving investigators without a clear connection to the other victims. Unlike those found with their hands bound behind their backs, Suzuki's disappearance remained unexplained and separate from the known evidence. The killer who targeted others left no trace of her, and her fate remains unknown. Investigators could not confirm whether she had been taken by the same person or if her case was unrelated. Her absence created a gap in the pattern that defined the serial killer's actions. For years, her disappearance stood apart from the others, complicating efforts to understand the full scope of the crimes. The Honolulu Strangler's identity and motives remain unsolved, and Diane Suzuki's story continues without resolution. Despite extensive investigations, the identity of the Honolulu Strangler has never been confirmed. A serial killer task force was established in response to the discovery of Denise Hughes' body on February 5, 1986, but no conclusive leads were found. To this day, the case remains unsolved and one of the most notorious mysteries in Hawaiian criminal history. The victims, Vicky Gale Purdy, Regina Sakamoto, Denise Hughes, Louise Medeiros, and Linda Pesce, were all found with signs of sexual assault and their hands bound behind their backs. Diane Suzuki disappeared under different circumstances and was not recovered. Blood evidence found at Diane Suzuki's last known location led to changes in Hawaii's harassment laws to include stalking. This discovery had a lasting impact on victim protections. The case highlighted the need for stronger legal measures to address behaviors that could lead to violence against women. As a result, Hawaii updated its laws to better safeguard individuals from persistent and threatening behavior. These changes aim to prevent future harm by making harassment and stalking more clearly defined as criminal acts. The legacy of Diane Suzuki's disappearance continues to influence legal frameworks designed to protect potential victims. The Honolulu Strangler case remains one of Hawaii's most haunting unsolved mysteries. 5 women lost their lives in a terrifying string of attacks between 1985 and 1986. Vicky Gale Purdy, a 25-year-old military spouse, was the first victim. She vanished after a night out clubbing in Waikīkī on May 29, 1985. Her body was discovered the next morning at Keehi Lagoon. Regina Sakamoto, a 17-year-old student, disappeared on January 14, 1986, after missing her bus to school. Tragically, her body was found at Keehi Lagoon a day later. Denise Hughes, a 21-year-old secretary active in her church, became the third victim. Her decomposing body was found in Moanalua stream on February 1, 1986. Louise Medeiros, a 25-year-old who had traveled to Kauai following her mother's death, was the fourth victim. Her body was discovered near Waikele stream on April 2, 1986. The Honolulu Strangler case remains unsolved despite extensive investigations and the creation of a dedicated task force. More than 3 decades later, the identity of the Honolulu Strangler remains unknown. Despite years of investigation and advancements in forensic science, no new evidence has surfaced to solve this case. The killer who targeted women across Hawaii between 1985 and 1986 left behind a pattern of violence that still puzzles investigators. 5 victims were found with their hands bound behind their backs, signs of sexual assault, and no clear connection to one another beyond the crime scene. Linda Pesce's discovery was incomplete, adding further questions to an already unsolved mystery. Diane Suzuki's disappearance did not fit the profile attributed to the killer, leaving her case even more complicated. The Honolulu Police Department used luminol and other forensic tools in her investigation, but no leads were confirmed. Today, the search for answers continues. Investigators still review evidence, hoping that one day new information will bring closure to these cold cases. For now, the killer's identity remains hidden, and the victims' families wait for justice. The Honolulu Strangler case remains unsolved, leaving the identities of the killer and the full circumstances of the crimes unknown. Despite extensive investigations and technological advancements in forensic science, no suspect has been identified or charged in connection with the murders. Over nearly 4 decades later, families still search for answers, and law enforcement continues to review evidence in hopes of bringing closure. The lack of resolution has left a lasting impact on the communities affected by these crimes, underscoring the need for continued efforts to solve this cold case. Linda Pesce's case remains incomplete. Unlike the other victims whose bodies were found, her disappearance was never fully resolved. On April 29th, she left home and was expected to return later that day. Despite extensive efforts by investigators, no further information about her whereabouts has been confirmed. The lack of closure surrounding Linda Pesce's case adds another layer of mystery to an already unresolved pattern. Her fate remains unknown over 3 decades later. The Honolulu Strangler case remains unsolved, and no new evidence has led to a confirmed identity or location of the killer. Despite extensive investigations over decades, the serial killer who targeted multiple women in Hawaii from 1985 to 1986 has never been identified. The victims, Vicki Gale Purdy, Regina Sakamoto, Denise Hughes, Louise Medeiros, and Linda Pesce, were found with signs of sexual assault and strangulation, but the killer's identity remains unknown. Diane Suzuki disappeared under circumstances that did not fit the profile attributed to the Honolulu Strangler. Today, the case continues to puzzle investigators, leaving families without closure and the public without answers. If you're drawn to unsolved mysteries, follow for the next investigation.